take a really close look at the latest iPhone 18 Pro Max rumors. I mean, a really good look. At first glance, it sounds like a massive leap forward. Bigger battery, fresh camera tricks, and a newly designed chip. But if you read between the lines, something feels a little off. This does not feel like the fearless Apple that dropped Face ID on us, or the company that shocked the PC world with the M1 chip. Honestly, this feels like a giant tech company looking in the rearview mirror and sweating. Let me break down exactly what is happening behind closed doors in Cupertino, because Apple is making some very out-of-character moves, and it tells us they're quietly feeling the pressure. Let's kick things off with the battery situation. The word on the street is that the iPhone 18 Pro Max is bumping up to a massive 5,200 mAh battery. That is a solid 100 extra over the 17 Pro Max. Now, you're probably thinking, hey, more battery is always a good thing, right? Well, yes, but to make that happen, Apple is reportedly making the phone thicker and significantly heavier. We're talking about 243 grams. That makes it the absolute heaviest iPhone ever created. If Steve Jobs were here to see a thick, heavy brick of an iPhone, he might just lose his mind. But Apple is not doing this because they suddenly had a revelation about battery life. They're doing this purely out of self-defense. Over in the Android world, Samsung has been packing 5,000 mAh batteries into their Ultra phones since 2022. And brands like OnePlus and Xiaomi are pushing all the way to 6,000. When you charge premium prices, but your budget rivals offer way more juice, you have a massive marketing problem. Most everyday users might not complain, but tech reviewers definitely do. And those reviews shape public perception. So, Apple is being forced to adapt under pressure. They are playing catch-up, and they're sacrificing their legendary thin and light design to do it. Next up, let's talk about the elephant in the room, or should I say the island on the screen. The dynamic island was introduced as this stroke of absolute design genius. Apple basically took an ugly screen cutout and dressed it up in a tuxedo. But fast forward to the iPhone 18 rumors, and things are getting messy. Some insiders say Apple is trying to shrink it by 35%, while others say they are still debating what to do. And that hesitation is super revealing. Why? Because the dynamic island was always just a band-aid for a problem they could not solve, hiding the sensors under the glass. Competitors have had under-display cameras on foldable phones for years now. Chinese manufacturers cracked this code a long time ago. Yet Apple, with all the money in the known universe, is still struggling to get their supply chain ready for a true all-screen experience. The island is a glaring daily reminder that Apple does not fully control its own display technology. And for a company that prides itself on total control, that is a huge insecurity. But if you want to see where Apple's pride really takes a hit, look at the cameras. For the longest time, Sony has been Apple's exclusive partner for image sensors. It was a perfect relationship that let Apple brag about custom engineering. But buried deep in the latest leaks is a detail that is actually mind-blowing. Apple is reportedly switching to Samsung-made sensors for the iPhone 18. Yes, that's Samsung, the exact same company they have spent billions of dollars fighting in court and mocking in ads. Apple is essentially walking over to their biggest rival and admitting that Samsung's new 3-layer sensor technology is simply better than what Sony can cook up right now. That is a massive public concession. You better believe Samsung is going to subtly flex this in their own marketing. When everyday buyers hear the iPhone camera is getting better, what is actually happening is that Apple had to swallow its pride to keep up. Late to the aperture party. And speaking of camera upgrades, the 18 Pro is finally supposed to get a variable aperture lens. This is a really cool feature that lets the camera physically open and close to adjust for different lighting and give you that sweet, natural blurred background. But let us check the history books for a second. Samsung put variable aperture on the Galaxy S9 back in 2018. That is 8 years ago. Huawei did it. Xiaomi did it. So why is Apple just now joining the party? Tech loyalists will say Apple just waits until they can perfect it. But the reality is much simpler. Apple's secret weapon has always been computational photography, using software magic to make photos look amazing. But software can only fake physics for so long. Eventually, you hit a wall. To get better photos now, Apple desperately needs the physical hardware that their rivals have been using for years. This is not groundbreaking innovation. It is just Apple admitting they have squeezed every last drop out of their software and need to catch up on the hardware side. The great button downgrade. Now, here's a move that is genuinely a little embarrassing. Remember the camera control button they just hyped up on the iPhone 17? They gave it a massive spotlight in the keynote. It was capacitive, pressure sensitive, and could detect your swipes and gentle taps. Well, grab your popcorn, because rumor has it they're already downgrading it for the iPhone 18. The leaks say they are stripping out the fancy capacitive layer to save on manufacturing costs, leaving just a basic pressure sensor. Why would a company famous for holding on to features for a decade suddenly nerf a brand new button? Because it turned out to be incredibly expensive to make, and it was causing costly repair headaches. They designed a fancy feature for a keynote presentation, but in the real world, it was a complicated solution to a problem nobody actually had. So now they are quietly walking it back, hoping we just will not notice. It shows a real struggle to find hardware features that actually matter to normal people. And to mask all of this, Apple is reportedly changing how they launch the phones entirely. Instead of dropping the whole iPhone 18 lineup in September, they might split it into two phases. The big, expensive Pro and Pro Max models will launch in the fall, and then the regular 18 models will come out months later in the spring of 2027. The corporate PR spin will probably be about optimizing the supply chain, but do not let that fool you. This is a pure psychological play. Splitting the launch gives Apple two massive media cycles every single year instead of one. It creates an artificial scarcity. It makes the Pro models feel incredibly exclusive because they get the spotlight all to themselves for 6 months. This is brilliant marketing, but also proves that Apple is leaning harder into release psychology than actual product excitement. They are optimizing their content calendar instead of inventing the future. Look, I'm not saying the iPhone 18 Pro Max will be a bad phone. Apple literally does not know how to make a bad phone. If your current battery is dying by noon and your screen is cracked, the 18 Pro is going to feel like absolute magic in your hands. The A20 chip will be a monster, and the ecosystem is as sticky as ever. But as tech fans, we have to see the bigger picture. Every thick millimeter, every downgraded button, and every borrowed sensor tells a story. It is the story of a company playing elite defense in a market where nobody is really innovating anymore. It is a giant game of chess where all the brands are just copying each other's moves. So what do you think? Is Apple losing its magic touch? Or is this just what happens when smartphones peak? Let me know your unfiltered thoughts down in the comments, because I read every single one. And if you want to keep cutting through the corporate hype with me, make sure to subscribe. Stay curious, stay smart, and I will catch you in the next one.